we've made it to the end of lockdown. Amazing. 30th of April. I say amazing because we recorded these things in 2019. Who knew? Everybody's hair's looking ridiculous. Nobody's spent any money on petrol. Climate change isn't a thing anymore. And everybody's got cupboards stacked full of pot noodles and spam. And that's kind of life nowadays. Thanks for sticking with it these last 29 nights, 30 nights. And the book's effectively finished. We finished on episode 29. The only thing that was really left was the epilogue, which I suppose to some extent kind of summarises the winners and losers in this book, if there's such a thing. Essentially, there were no winners other than one person, and here she is.
Epilogue, 13th of June 2007. The Falklands War was a great national struggle. The whole country knew it and felt it. It was also mercifully short. But many of our boys, and girls as well of course, are today stationed in war zones where the issues are more complex, where the outcome is more problematic, and where life is no less dangerous. In these circumstances, they often need a different kind of courage, though the same commitment. So, as we recall and give thanks for the liberation of our islands, let us also recall the many battlefronts where British forces are engaged today. There are, in a sense, no final victories, for the struggle against evil in the world is never ending. Tyranny and violence wear many masks, yet from victory in the Falklands we can all today draw hope and strength. Fortune does, in the end, favour the brave. And it is Britain's good fortune that none are braver than our armed forces. Thank you all. Radio message from Lady Thatcher, broadcast on the British Forces Broadcasting Service to mark the 25th anniversary of the liberation of the Falkland Islands.
Wow, that was incredible. Thank you so much to the magnificent Janice Forsyth as Margaret Thatcher, and also to other guest readers who gave their time and commitment to doing this. I'm just forever grateful to them. And I'm now going to have to try and remember them in order without anything written down. So first off, we had Alistair Braidwood from Scots Way. Then we had Bobby Bluebell. Then we had Stephen Watt, poet, brilliant reading. The magnificent Graham Armstrong, whose new book, Young Team, you definitely need to check out. It's incredible. Julie Ray, a brilliant writer who's going to be absolutely massive one of these days. Stuart Cosgrove, who is just one of my heroes, really. So to get him doing this was just phenomenal for me. Leo McIlvanney, who finished it off brilliantly from the other side of the world. Alan Parks, another amazing writer of Glaswegian crime novels, which are just absolutely at the pinnacle of writing in Scotland at the minute. Phenomenal. And last but not least, Teresa Talbot, who had quite a few people in tears, I think, with the rendering of one of Gary's letters back. Thank you all. I'm just knocked out that you did this for us, and I'm really appreciative. Thank you. I've got a lot to be really grateful for to this book. It was written in, I think, 2010, 2011, when I was, in some respects, in a bit of a dark place, you know, literally and psychologically, I suppose. I was overseas, doing a lot of work overseas in unusual places in China and Libya and all these other interesting but strange places where there was a feeling of dislocation from my family, and I was missing Elaine and the kids and all the rest of it. And there was really, beyond work and the things that we were actually doing there wasn't all that much to do, And I started writing, not in any way hoping or even thinking that something would get published, more therapeutically, really just to try and connect with an element of home that I kind of recognised and that I was sort of missing, and people that had been part of me growing up, and I suppose to a certain extent becoming the person that I am now. And I think to some extent trying to hold on to those values, the things that I cared about, the music that I loved, the politics that were such a big part of life at that time, and that sense of being someone at an age that where the entire world was in front of you and at your feet, and not entirely knowing what to do with that reality and being a bit scared of it at the same time. And I think writing the book was a pretty cathartic thing for me to do. And as I say, when I came back and had done that, I stuck it in a drawer, and that, to all intents and purposes, that was really it for me. I had a job. I did a whole load of other things. Writing wasn't something that I had ever really contemplated doing beyond just something to pass the time when I was over in other countries. And I suppose in some respects inadvertently met Karen Sullivan from, at the time, Arcadia Books, now Orenda Books. And long story short, there was a bit of dialogue and over a thing that I had done with a character called Bobby Soonis on Twitter. And out of that, Karen, on behalf of Arcadia, asked me to look at and review a book that they had signed, because it looked like it would be something based on, I suppose, my Twitter profile and the shit that I was writing at that time that I would be interested in. So after a bit of backwards and forwards, I reviewed the book, and as a shout out for it, it was a book called Fan by Danny Rhodes, great book. And I gave some notes and comments back that I think Karen and Danny quite liked. And off the back of that, I felt, encouraged by someone at the office that I should really send down this manuscript called The Last Days of Disco, and ask her if it was something that, she might offer some comment on. I'm sure her heart sank when she got me asking that question. But I think it's fair to say she liked it, and offered me a contract for it. But I delayed signing that for such a long time that Karen had made up her mind to leave Arcadia and start her own publishing house called Orenda. And I imagine that had I signed the original Arcadia contract on the day or in the time that I was given to sign it, then I wouldn't really be looking at this as a published thing now, because I don't really think Arcadia would have taken their option any further, and I would probably have been left in that environment. So I hadn't signed it. Karen asked me if I would be the first book signed by Orenda, and I immediately said, well, of course, she was the one that liked the book, so why wouldn't I? And that was it, 5 years ago. And I in some respects, doing this now, I didn't quite know how ill Karen was before I started this exercise. That only became apparent once we were kind of into it. But after we started, the determination to get through it, and to work with Into Creative to produce something, from my point of view anyway, was really simply to make her proud. I kind of figured that she probably wasn't well enough to be watching these episodes night after night, but I knew at some point that she would catch up with it. And I think as someone who's always been really supportive of me in writing, and encouraging, and incredibly enthusiastic about the authors on the Orenda roster, and everything about the publishing house. This really was for her, for Karen Sullivan. So when she eventually gets to see it, I hope she's proud of it. I hope she's proud of and pleased that she signed this book in the first instance. I'm incredibly pleased with it and proud of it. And if I was never to write another word, I would be delighted with the fact that I had this as a physical thing that's been turned into German and won a few nominations and shortlistings, and was acquired by the National Theatres for Scotland, with a brilliant script written by Johnny McKnight, which hopefully one day will see the light of day, or the light of stage, if that's the right word. So I kind of wanted to finish this off with just a wee bit of a comment about things like songs, and then some acknowledgements and stuff like that. The songs are really important, and I think Alistair Braidwood, who appeared as one of the guest readers in episode 19, had made some comments before, and he's absolutely accurate and right about whether my record collection influences what I write more than perhaps other books and other writing, and he's bang on. Music is something that takes me back to a particular place and evokes so many memories about how I felt at a certain time that it's inevitable that it becomes invested and immersed within the whole reading experience for me. So every book I've written, there's been 4 published, there's another one hopefully on the way near the end of the year. They all have playlists, they all have a means of connecting songs that are written at the back of the book into the story and prompt the story, and in some cases actually propel the story. So the songs that, just in case you don't believe me, the songs that brought about the last days of disco are Heatwave by The Jam, available on Polydor Records, 1979, actually written by Dozier Holland, and a massive hit for Martha and the Vandellas, from the album Setting Suns, which I'll come back to shortly. Ghost Town by The Specials captured pretty much perfectly the way it felt to be in a suburban environment in Thatcher's Britain at that time, Thatcher's Scotland. Probably more relevantly, written by Jerry Dammers, available on Two Tone Records, 1981. The Adventures of Grandmaster Flash and the Wheels of Steel, Grandmaster Flash, available on Sugar Hill Records, written by hundreds of people, needless to say, because of all the samples on it. Heart of Glass, Blondie, one of my favourite songs when I was young, written by Debbie Harry and Chris Steen, and I'm honoured and pretty delighted by the fact that Debbie Harry, her book in Germany came out on the same label as my books in Germany, Heine Hardcore, and my pride of place in a wee box where I keep a lot of stuff is a Heine Hardcore magazine promotion of the 2 books, where my book comes just a couple of pages before Debbie Harry's book, so that was pretty great. Don't You Want Me, The Human League, if people remember, this was absolutely massive in 1982, number 1 for what felt like forever. Up the Junction, Squeeze, whilst not directly related to the year that the book was set, I sat an English O-level and used the lyrics to Up the Junction as the basis of that piece of work, which I failed, incidentally, but not because of the song, needless to say, just my poor interpretation of it. The Chords, Maybe Tomorrow, which was a brilliant single, and a part of that kind of mod revival. And there's an element in the book where one of the characters, I'm saying I'm giving it away here, one of the characters goes to a house party, and while other people are drunk and shagging each other in rooms upstairs, one of the characters is stealing some of the 7-inch singles. If the person that I stole this from at a house party in 1981 is listening to this now, I apologise. I've still got it. If you get in touch with me, I'll get it back to you. Sorry about that. Plan B, Dexy's Midnight Runners. Again, one of my favourite groups. Kevin Rowland is a genius, and if I was ever to have the chance of writing one other thing beyond this and beyond fiction, it would be a sort of semi-fictionalised autobiography of Kevin Rowland. I've even got the structure of it in my head. So again, Kevin, if you're watching this, then get in touch. Let's hook up and we'll do something great. Party Fears 2, The Associates, what a brilliant record. Available in WEA Records, 1982, fantastic voice. And then, there are three songs that appeared in the section about going to Wigan Casino. Fantastic soul records. Big Bird by Eddie Floyd, Get Out My Life Woman by Lee Dorsey, and Picture Me Gone by Madeleine Bell. I had the 7-inch singles of all of these records. Don't have them anymore, which is brings a great deal of heartache to me, I have to say. The Magnificent Seven by The Clash. Again, another amazing band. Saw them a couple of times. Phenomenal live. Good Times by Chic on Atlantic Records, 1979. And Inside Out by Odyssey on RCA Records, 1982. Two brilliant dance records, disco records. Mobile DJing when these records came on was just amazing. The power of these records to have people up dancing was incredible. And Inside Out by Odyssey was written by Jesse Ray, Scots guy who used to wear the kilt and a big Highlander sword. That fact fucking blew my mind for years when I found out about it. Best of My Love, The Emotions, written by Maurice White from Earth, Wind and Fire. Available on Columbia Records, 1977. Another incredible record. Rocket Man, Elton John, which is basically underscores the scene where Gary's in the Falklands and thinks he's going to die, and all he can think about is his dad. So that music connected them at that point, and it's just an amazing record, in my opinion. Shipbuilding, Robert Wyatt, again, just phenomenal songwriting, captures a mood and an atmosphere, and that whole kind of melancholy about the pointlessness of the Falkland Islands conflict and the impact of that on families back in the UK. Just incredible. Rough Trade Records, 1982, written by Elvis Costello and Clive Langer, obviously. And then finally, I suppose the one record that was 1982 for me, Story of the Blues, The Mighty Wah. It was just such a phenomenal thing to hear for the first time. Incredibly powerful, uplifting, inspiring, thought-provoking. It kind of captured everything I felt at the time about politics, about Thatcher, about the unfairness of it all, and the political angle, I think in the book is quite pronounced. And I mentioned earlier on, the only winner here really was Margaret Thatcher and the Tory party. It was because they manipulated and opportunistically took advantage of a situation to get themselves out of a domestic problem that they had here. Now, I'm not naive enough not to think all politicians do the same thing. I think the worrying thing for me now, looking at politics, is it's become a wee bit like football. You know, there's a kind of binary attitude to the way politicians and political parties are reinforced by a kind of myopia about what they do. And that's a big difference from when I was younger and when I was very political, you know. And I suppose it's best captured by the fact that I, as a member of the Labour Party, I felt that I needed to hold them to a higher account than anybody else, you know. I expected nothing from Thatcher and the Tory Party. They acted the way I expected them to. Therefore, you know, nothing that they could do would surprise me or would upset me in any way. What upset me was how the party that I supported, with the values that I thought I shared, if they didn't, you know, raise their game or respond more or whatever, I was more critical of the Labour Party than of any other party, yet I was a supporter of it. And, you know, I think there's an element of that seems to have gone, and I don't know whether it's a social media thing, that, you know, people are very specific and blinkered about how they support politics. You know, my feeling is you should be questioning everything. You know, all politicians are, to a certain extent, opportunistic, you know. And I get that, you know, that's one of the reasons why you would probably desire to be a politician. That doesn't mean to say that, you know, you slavishly defend one party and only cruelly attack the other one. You've got to question everything, you know, my opinion anyway. And the book really is an element in that. For me, it was about trying to capture an attitude that I had to politics at the time, and how it, you know, from the beginning of the story probably to the end of the story, my understanding and interest in, you know, in politics was growing as I went from being 17 to 18 and started to understand how things like the Falkland Islands, for example, might have involved me at one point, you know. So anyway, that's kind of it, really. Last Days of Disco. The acknowledgements, I'm going to read this out because I need to thank some of the people in the order that I thanked them when I was writing it. So, acknowledgements. Writing this book began as a personal dream the day after my 40th birthday, along with running the New York Marathon and playing for Glasgow Rangers. I've all but given up on the other two. They just seem to require far too much training and personal dedication, or a time machine. Maybe someday, who knows. I'm grateful to my family and friends for encouragement, but especially to Elaine for her love and support. Also, thanks to Mark Stan, who very briefly had contemplated being my agent. What a lovely guy. Gave me massive advice and assistance. And then we either decided, or I decided, or he decided that actually we were better off going our separate ways at the end. And I think he was probably right, actually. I'm indebted to Kevin Toner, who's a friend of mine, for countless rereads, and now I'm not massively superstitious, but the one thing I would do on finishing every book is give it to Kevin Toner to read, to give me some kind of indication as to whether it's absolute shite or whether there's something of a story in there. And as I mentioned earlier on, I also thank my lucky stars. I had the very good fortune to meet the effervescent Karen Sullivan, who gave me belief and kept me on track, and that's been the case for the last 5 years. Finally, and although he'll probably never be aware of it unless someone on here knows him, I'm grateful to Paul Weller for continuing inspiration. Anyone who reads this book and then listens to the Setting Suns LP will be immediately aware of the place it has in my heart, and still has. As has this one, actually, sound effects. And then the final line is, Joey Miller will return in The Man Who Loved Islands. So I kind of knew that at that point there was another story here. I didn't know it was going to be the rise and fall of the miraculous Vespas first, but that just seemed like too good a story not to write, you know. And then The Man Who Loved Islands came later and tied all three books together with one-day festival on the Ailsa Craig, which is a tiny wee uninhabited island, not that far from, I'm pointing over my shoulder here because it is in that direction, a tiny wee island not that far from Ayr, Heads of Ayr. And the bands were all playing on a floating stage. So who knows, maybe after Into Creative and Stephen has conquered the world, he won't want to do anything else with me, but you never know, maybe this time next year if there's a similar circumstance, and I severely hope that there isn't, but some mechanism whereby we do something like this again. Maybe it will be The Man Who Loved Islands or The Rise and Fall of the Miraculous Vespas. Meanwhile, thanks very much for sticking with us, for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you check out, as I mentioned on the last episode, some of the other work that Stephen does into creative. It's absolutely incredible. The production values are great, and that's about it. So remember, as you move forward, take care, look after yourself, look after your families, and all you need is love. Good night.